Hello everyone, welcome back to Allcarnews, and it has now been a full week with this all-new 2025 Acura ADX in the highest trim you can get, the A-Spec Advance package. And over the course of this week, we have taken on a road trip. We have driven it plenty around town on the highway and really got to experience everything that the ADX does have to offer. And overall, I think it is a pretty fine SUV. I really don't have any blaring complaints with it whatsoever, honestly. It's pretty comfortable, it's pretty smooth. All the technology works as advertised, I would say. And everything's pretty nice. You have heated, ventilated seats, really good just general safety systems, and overall a lot of standard equipment. And the one thing that Acura is pitching this ADX to be is a little bit more of a value-oriented option in this luxury subcompact SUV segment. Though I think in that aspect, the ADX falls just a little bit short of some of its other European competitors in some areas, though in some other areas I think it is still excelling and could be a better buy for you depending on what you want, since there are so many competitors in this segment. So since we are driving, let's talk about our driving characteristics first. The ADX overall, I think it's a just totally fine SUV in its driving characteristics. Steering isn't anything crazy. It really doesn't stand out, I would say, in this class. You can adjust the stiffness, so I can pop it into my individual setting, which I have the steering set to the sport. So it does stiffen up a bit. The ADX does have a multi-link rear suspension, strut up front, and going around corners, it feels generally pretty planted and confident, I would say, in its handling characteristics, which is a nice thing, honestly. It doesn't feel like it's tipping over with body roll that so much, but you know, some of the more European competitors do feel a little bit more taut, maybe a little bit stiffer in the overall suspension tuning, but just overall a little bit more of a tighter chassis and driving experience, which could be something you might want more. This one has a little bit more of a softer, but still a little bit on the firmer side of the suspension. But overall, driving characteristics are fine. I just wouldn't call it the sportiest in this class whatsoever. If you really want to consider a runner-up from the non-luxury segment, the Mazda CX-30, very similar sized vehicle, does also really well with handling in this department. Now, acceleration in the car, I think, could be improved. This car does only have 190 horsepower. And Acura did fit this with a CVT, which, you know, is a fine economy car transmission. You know, it's aimed for fuel economy, but in the luxury segment, I'm not too sure if buyers are really going to want that. I don't really find a CVT inherently a sporty transmission. So that's something you're really going to want to consider, test drive the vehicle, see how you like it or maybe not like it, and make your decision from that point. Still sticking with the powertrain here, I just don't think it's up to snuff, I think, for this class. 190 horsepower out of a 1.5 liter 4-cylinder turbo mated to a CVT. With these MPG numbers, I think Acura and Honda could have done a little bit better here. Now, this engine does have VTEC, so it does kind of kick into a little bit of a gear sense in that when you kind of get higher in the rev range there. And winding it out, it does get powered down to the ground pretty well. You just do have to really rev out this engine. Now, sport mode 100% makes a big difference in terms of this powertrain's responsiveness. It really does enable you to feel a little bit more quicker than the other modes, but you do have that pumped in engine sound you can hearing right there. But it doesn't really shift because it's a CVT unless you're really stepping on it. Now, we do have these nice metal paddle shifters here to control our continuously variable transmission. But as you can see, not much really happens there. It's pretty quick in terms of its responsiveness, but I wouldn't really call it a dynamic experience with these paddles. I like that they're metal, but I haven't really found myself using them much over the course of this week. But I wouldn't call it slow at all. It's just not the quickest, and I was expecting a little bit more out of this powertrain for this class of vehicle. But you know, where the ADX really comes into play is all of these features and things you're going to be getting, as well as Acura and Honda's legendary reliability. So, you know, if you're really shopping for that in this segment and you're confident in the brands, you've had them for a while, I think this is going to be a really safe choice for you. You're really not going to be missing out on much, especially in terms of features at a fully loaded price of around 45 grand, as we have this particular ADX. You know, it's around, I would say, a grand or two cheaper than some of its key competitors similarly optioned from the European segment. So it is an incredible value, I would say, in this A-Spec Advance trim. I think the A-Spec trim is a much more better value for your money, but you will be missing out on, you know, this top tier 15 speaker Bang & Olufsen audio system, the Google built-in system as well, and a heated steering wheel. On the highway, as you can see, we have the Acura Watch system, which actually works really well. We have our lane keep assist and steering assist, and we can easily turn on our adaptive cruise control right here, and all of those systems work really well together. You can set your and change your following distance pretty easily, and like I said, that works great. You do have to keep your hands on the steering wheel, but overall, I really don't have any issues with this system. Blind spot works really great. This works perfectly fine, and I really like that, actually. So that's a nice aspect of the ADX. So overall, over the course of this week, I think the car has been pretty nice to us. It's great on a road trip. I just noticed on the highway, it is a little bit louder than expected as well. You know, it definitely is a much quieter vehicle than something like a Honda HR-V that it is shares some components and bones with, but I definitely found it to be a little bit louder on the highway than I was expecting. Some interesting reverberations coming from the rear seat area, even with this sunshade closed. I wasn't expecting it. It almost sounded like there was a window open, even though they were all closed. But it's pretty comfortable and smooth, actually. And just under some pavement situations, I feel a little bit more unsettledness than I would like for this class of vehicle. And that's where I find some of the competitors to feel a little bit more taut and just, you know, overall cohesive as a chassis package than this ADX, though it is not too far off from those vehicles whatsoever. Now let's also quickly test out Acura's new Bang & Olufsen audio system in this new ADX here. They do get very loud. Okay, everyone, there's a little quick listen to our audio track here. Now, overall, I think I said this audio system is pretty good. One thing I did note this week, and there are a lot of settings with the system. We have our adaptive cruise control on, so it'll be a little more safe for doing this, but you get this cool little they call it Baosonic tone and surround sound settings here. So you can adjust this based off of more of like sound profiles of like bright, energetic, warm, and relaxed. Or it actually does work well, so you can really play around with that and adjust it as you like. And you also can adjust the volumes of this center speaker over there, as well as this the roof speakers above your head. I actually lowered down the roof speakers. I had them closer to high before because I felt like my head was vibrating when the volume was up a little bit and we had more of a bass heavy soundtrack on. So that was an interesting thing there, and I'm glad that Acura allows you to lower the speakers independently of the other speakers, because I actually found myself wanting to use that feature this week. Okay guys, enough of me blabbering on, but those are my impressions of the all-new Acura ADX. Like I said, if you're really looking at this vehicle, shoot for the A-Spec trim or the entry-level trim. I think those are really going to be where you're getting the most bang for your buck in this vehicle, unless you can get a really good deal on this A-Spec Advance package. I don't think you need to opt for it. I think you're going to get everything you really want in that mid-tier trim. And overall, thank you guys at Acura for loaning us this vehicle for a weekend review. And as always, stay tuned for more coming on car news as we sit in traffic and enjoy Acura's adaptive cruise control system. Cheers.